Hey, what is up, everybody? This is Stevie Breach coming to you. I am driving home from work. Today is August 8th, and it is the anniversary of one of the weirdest things that we've ever seen in the world of wrestling. In 1998, on August 8th, WCW hosted a pay-per-view live from Sturgis. I believe it was their second or third time going to Sturgis hosting this pay-per-view. They basically set up a wrestling ring in the middle of a motorcycle rally because they knew that there was going to be a lot of people around, and I think that was just their main objective, was to get people watching wrestling in a weird sort of location. They gave it just a different kind of look on television. The only problem is that when they went to Sturgis, they didn't charge any admission. It was just, if you want to watch wrestling, we're setting up a ring, we're going to have wrestling. The only money that came in off of this show was pay-per-view buys. And Sturgis, the first year that they were there, they had the NWO with Hulk Hogan. I believe that was the first one, was Hulk Hogan versus the Giant. They just got lucky, and they struck having Hog Wild there when they had the hardest wrestling angle that there's been in the history of wrestling in a long fucking time. WCW, we've been talking a lot about because of the fact that they ran the Who Killed WCW documentary a few months ago. I honestly think that Road Wild 1998, they had to change it from Hog Wild because of it being set up in the motorcycle rally, and Hog being a trademark that was owned by Harley Davidson. They got in a little bit of trouble. They didn't have to change the first one. If you look up the history of Road Wild, the first one is still called Hog Wild. But I think that they realized that they ran another one, they might get in some trouble with Harley Davidson. That's why they changed it to Road Wild. But they were looking for some sort of gimmick to make people want to buy this show. And I think that the WCW was just going out there. They were throwing anything against the wall. A month beforehand, they hit the biggest home run that you could ever have. The Utah Jazz were going up against the Chicago Bulls in the NBA Finals, and they ended up being able to use Dennis Rodman and Karl Malone fresh off the NBA Finals, and it just ended. They actually got in a little bit of a skirmish. Some people say that it was a work. I think there was a little bit of a part of the game. They were both going after a loose ball. How they both could have planned that to sell this WCW pay-per-view, I don't really know. But they had a mixed tag match. Basically, Hulk Hogan and Dennis Rodman going up against Karl Malone and DDP. Hit a home run. Everybody bought that show. So they came back the next month. I think the planning had to have been in the works a little bit. I don't think they just come to Jay Leno and say, hey, Jay, you're the host of Tonight Show. You have a lot of people watching you. You're the leader of the late night shows on NBC. We need you to come to this. The contract talks probably were set up months beforehand. But they run a storyline of Hulk Hogan and Eric Bischoff taking over the Tonight Show live on NBC. It's only for one, commercial break, just one segment of the show. They take it over. It's NWO Tonight Show, and for that, Jay Leno is going to come to Sturgis. He's going to train and learn how to wrestle, and he's going to wrestle with Diamond Dallas Page. It is a huge step down from the month beforehand when it was a celebrity-ridden show with Rodman and Malone, two other athletes. They're coming from basketball to wrestling. Would they know how to fight? Would they know how to grapple? This match, you trade out Malone and Rodman for Bischoff and Leno. I don't think anybody wanted to see Leno versus Bischoff in a singles match, but maybe you would have wanted to see DDP versus Hogan. Hogan is no longer WCW champion. 2 months beforehand, he had lost on Nitro to Goldberg. So Goldberg is really like feeling the boom of just taking over the wrestling industry. He's debatable, like he's easily top 3 in popularity in wrestling. He's one of the only reasons people are watching WCW, other than just they've always watched Southern wrestling and they want to watch WCW. Almost everybody else in the world is watching The Rock. They're watching Stone Cold Steve Austin, The Undertaker, Triple H. They might not have had like as many big of names, but they just were able to produce such better wrestling that just made those guys bigger names in the long run than the huge roster that WCW had at the time. You show up to Road Wild 1998. You have a brand new champion in Goldberg. He's on the show. He doesn't even defend his championship. Goldberg wins the title. He goes to the next pay-per-view at Bash at the Beach. He's not the main event, but he's like a supporting part of the show. He goes up against Curt Hennig of the NWO. Even if Curt Hennig was the hottest he'd ever been when he fresh turned off of the Four Horsemen and joined the NWO, I don't see him as the number one guy getting a title shot at a pay-per-view. Goldberg just needed somebody to beat, and he beat him in 3 minutes. Other than like throwing somebody else out from the NWO, Kevin Nash, Scott Hall, anybody, the NWO, they just invite Goldberg to an impromptu battle royal. Not even for the title, not for a title shot, just an exhibition. We're going to have one WCW guy, Goldberg, and he's going to go out there against, I forget if it was 5 members of the NWO Wolfpack, 5 members of the NWO White and Black, the Hogan's team, Hollywood, I guess they called it at the time. But just does not even sound like a good time. Main event comes down. It's basically Bischoff and Hogan going up against DDP and Leno. What do you really go? I don't really think that anybody expects anything at a Leno and Bischoff. It's pretty much going to be DDP and Hogan trying to work this freak show of a celebrity tag team match into existence. Basically they've got Miss Elizabeth and the Disciple outside of the ring for the NWO. Kevin Eubanks, the band leader, is out there for Leno. I honestly was hoping the whole time for a heel turn from Kevin Eubanks. I think they would have made it a whole lot of enjoyable for the match. I thought it would have made it a whole lot enjoyable for at least the first show where Leno's back on NBC and he mentions wrestling for WCW, that they could at least have some banter back and forth about WCW and NWO with Eubanks and Leno. It's not like a long-standing feud that's going to have to like live on for the history of the Tonight Show, but at least you can get something of Tonight Show mentioning, like, hey, what was going on when we were wrestling that match, and all of a sudden you joined the NWO. But the match ends up coming down to Leno and Bischoff inside of the ring. Bischoff, he's pleading off Leno. Leno's coming in with the big chin and the big fist like he's going to punch him. Bischoff gives him a shot in the nuts. And basically he's sort of like cheering on that he got a better shot in on Leno. Eubanks slides in from the outside. He throws it up and hits a beautiful diamond cutter. Maybe the only wrestling move that he learned on the way to the show. But he hits it, and then Leno's able to cover Bischoff 1, 2, 3, and get the win. The Tonight Show, Jay Leno, I don't know if he ever mentioned it on stage, like in the comedy act, but I doubt he did. Never mentions this, ever. Yet once again, on the Tonight Show, WCW, like, they get Leno showing up on the show. I think Leno ended up giving his money to charity. He's wrestling in a blue t-shirt that says The Tonight Show on the front and the back, just in case you didn't know who he was. I didn't expect him out there wrestling like in no shirt or anything like that, or in a singlet, but I don't know. Blue Tonight Show doesn't really sell like, hey, let's turn on WCW, let's buy this $30 pay-per-view and see what's going on. Honestly, in the long run, I don't think it's what killed WCW, but having a second celebrity-written pay-per-view in a row is probably, you know, the die-hard WCW pay-per-view fans at the time, you know, getting another bill for $30 in the mail, and I bet you that's one of the reasons they decided, like, hey, you know what, watching Nitro is fun, but I don't know if we need to order the pay-per-views anymore. It was a good thing when you look back on the history of wrestling, thinking about, you know, Leno wrestling for them and how big of a star he was at the time. But in the long run, when you really think back of it, just poor timing, and running two celebrity pay-per-views back to back probably wasn't the best bang for your buck in the long run.